This is page 2 of your 2.7 notes, and we're looking at what the discriminant tells us here. So if the value of your discriminant is greater than 0, so you might want to write that, greater than 0, that implies you're going to have two real solutions here. And your graph is going to look like either this, where it's opening down and crossing the x-axis twice, or your vertex is below the x-axis, but it's opening up, so it's also going to cross it twice. So you have two x-intercepts, and those x-intercepts are your solutions. If your discriminant is 0, if you remember, the discriminant is part of the quadratic formula. If you're doing this and you come out with 0 in the square root, the square root of 0 is 0. So it doesn't matter whether you add or subtract 0, you're still just left with this one number. So therefore, you're only going to have one real solution. So add or subtract 0, you still end up with the same thing. So that means your vertex is your only x-intercept. So whether it's opening up or if it's opening down, it only touches or crosses the x-axis once, and that would be the vertex. And our last option is when b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, meaning your discriminant is a negative number. If your discriminant is the negative number, remember the discriminant is inside the square root. If you have a negative inside of a square root, you should remember from just like last week that that means you have no real solution. It's an imaginary number. So no real solutions. But we are going to have two imaginary solutions. And we have 2 because of the plus or minus in front of the square root. And what that's going to look like, if you have no real solutions, that means that your vertex is either above and it opens up, so it doesn't cross the x-axis, or your vertex is below the x-axis and it opens down. It never actually touches the graph. So to do questions 8 through 11, again, we are just doing b squared minus 4 times a times c. Your b is 10, your a is 1, since there's nothing written there, and c is negative 25. So b squared, 10 squared, minus 4 times 1 times negative 25. Make sure you do the b squared as one part and the minus 4ac is the other part. If you need to, definitely use your calculator. You end up with 100. When you're doing the minus 4ac, you're going to have two negatives, which gives you a positive 100. So our discriminant is 200. To look at this chart, 200 is greater than 0. It's a positive number. So therefore, if you were to graph this, it would be a parabola that crosses the x-axis twice. And you are going to get two real solutions. It's going to be specific spots where it crosses the x-axis. Number 9, your a is 4, b is negative 4, c is 1. So b squared is negative 4 squared minus 4 times a times c, 4, 4, and 1. Again, please make sure you're doing these. Your b squared, you're going to do all as 1, and minus 4ac, you're going to do all as one part, and then work with those two. So this is positive 16. Your minus 4ac, there's only one negative, so it's still a negative 16. So we end up with 0. If you have a discriminant of 0, again, we're talking about the part underneath the quadratic formula. So if you've got plus or minus 0, that's not going to change anything. So you're only going to have one solution. And it's going to be a real number. And I guess I forgot to write this on number 8. You have 2 real solutions. And number 10. Even though everything's on the right side, that's fine. A is 1, B is 3, C is 4, 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4. Again, B squared is one thing, minus 4AC is another chunk you want to do at a time. So we get 9 minus 16, which is negative 7. You would have negative 7 inside of the square root, which means you're going to have 2 imaginary answers or solutions. So you have 2 answers here. Part 1, what is the discriminant? The discriminant, the number under the square root, is negative 7. And then tell how many solutions and whether they're real or imaginary. So if you have a negative under the square root, you're going to have imaginary numbers. And number 11, your A is 1, your B is negative 5, and C is 4. So we've got negative 5 squared minus 4 times A times C. B squared minus 4AC. 25 minus 16, so that's 9. Again, looking up at your chart, 9 is a positive number. It's greater than 0, so you have 2 real solutions. And to elaborate more on that, again, it's the number under the square root. So if you had a number like 9, you would do the square root of 9, so this would be something plus 3 and something minus 3.